Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the But First You Failed podcast. These days, AI or artificial intelligence is something you cannot go a day without hearing about. It's being integrated into our software and the different platforms we use almost on a daily basis. Here on the podcast, it's something that I've adopted and I've started using in my workflow that helps me speed up the process of editing video, show notes, sound, and so much more. It's been such a blessing. However, that's just the tip of the iceberg. AI is becoming more and more relevant day by day. A recent McKinsey global survey reveals that AI adoption among organizations has soared from 20% in 2017 to 78% in 2025. That means we're standing at the threshold of a new industrial revolution with almost 40% of global jobs expected to be impacted by AI in the future. This means that AI will no longer be a luxury, but rather a way of life. That's why I'm so excited for today's conversation. It's such a timely conversation with today's guest. She's a leader at the forefront of this conversation, Nikki Barua. Nikki Barua is a serial entrepreneur. She's a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and leading expert in helping people and organizations accelerate their success. She's also the interim CEO of Latinas in Tech. In her 25-year career in innovation, she has helped global brands transform their culture and capabilities. Now she's on a mission to help business leaders reinvent the way that they live and lead and succeed in the age of AI. Nikki has won numerous awards, including Entrepreneur of the Year by ACE, among others. She's been recognized in Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Most Influential Women, named an LA Woman of Influence by the Business Journals, and a Woman of Entrepreneurship by LA Lakers. She is such an inspiration. And Nikki, I'm just so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm thrilled to be here and I can't wait for a conversation.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask you the icebreaker question that I ask everyone when they come on the podcast. It's, what did you fail at this week?
Lifting correctly. So I've been on this fitness kick working with an amazing health coach, and he's been consistently telling me that form matters more than prowess, right? Like, don't try to show off, just like do it by the book.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen. And so I lifted incorrectly and injured myself. So not only am I in pain, but it's been a great lesson to learn that, sometimes failure comes from aiming too high.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Oh my gosh. I love it. I feel like I've been seeing everyone talk about weights. Like, you have to do weights. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, I feel like for years it was like cardio. Like, all of us women were
Yeah.
cardios, and now it's like, no, that weight training. So I love that. I love that. And Nikki, in your own words, could you please kind of share a little bit more about what you do, about your book, about Latinas in Tech? I know you guys have a summit coming up soon, so I want to hear all about all the things.
Yeah. Well, the through line of my journey and my life story is all about turning obstacles into opportunities. Throughout my life, even coming to America as an immigrant and building my career in the corporate world and then being an entrepreneur, the thing that I've learned over and over again is that it's not about, your talent or intellect or ambition. It really comes down to access. That's the real game changer, that when I look at my career, it's sort of in two halves. The first half where I kept my head down, worked really hard, did everything by the book, followed the rules, and I had a decent amount of success. But the second half of my career, I took off like a rocket ship. Everything changed. My success accelerated, my wealth multiplied, my influence grew, and all of that. And it was simply because I had access to the right people at the right time and learned the right strategies. And that has been so powerful in recognizing that what holds people back is lack of access. And that's why the role at Latinas in Tech is in leading this amazing organization. What personally drives me is all about creating that access. We're living at a time where there's just, so much opportunity available. It's the greatest time in modern human history. And yet, if Latinas don't have access to those opportunities, not only are we getting left behind, but we're not providing our unique perspectives and talent to that. And that's what our organization is dedicated to, is in building HEFAs and, developing future ready leaders that can create the kind of world that is great for everybody. And I appreciate you mentioning the summit because May 28th, 29th, and 30th, we have an incredible annual summit in San Francisco, which is going to be the most energetic, action-packed tech event. So if you have any interest in tech, even if you're not in tech, you come to the summit, because if you want to know where the future is headed, that's where it's happening. And it's going to be equal parts career transformation and family reunion. It's going to be the kind of place where you know you belong and you can learn from incredible peers and leaders in the industry.
I love that. I love that. And before we hopped into the podcast, before we started recording, you were kind of telling me a little bit of just a snippet of your career trajectory. And I'm just so fascinated because you said you've built multiple businesses, built and sold multiple businesses.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the dream for every entrepreneur. That's like
Yeah.
when you have a successful business, you're like, when can I sell this thing and start some. So I'm just fascinated. Can you kind of share a little bit about that journey or kind of what you
Yeah.
learned on that? I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, for me, entrepreneurship has been a journey of growth and self-awareness. That's how I look at it. That you can get an MBA and learn about business, or you can build a real business yourself, right? So throughout every business that I've created has been built on purpose. It's about having a vision for the kind of change you want to drive and your unique lens with which you want to create that. But the reality is, there's entrepreneurial stories are often made to sound very glamorous, and it's all about like you become a multimillionaire and you have this great exit, and there's all this fantasy about like what it's really like. The truth is, it's the hardest thing in the world you could be doing. There are way better ways to make a living, for sure, but it has to be about something you feel deeply passionate about. And for me, the part that I love is creating jobs. It's about transforming myself. It's about leaving your imprint in the world and something you believe in. So if someone has an entrepreneurial dream, the greatest advice I can give is dream bigger, because often the reason businesses don't grow or they get stuck at a certain size, which often, when you look at the number of businesses that are there, even in just the United States, there's thousands of businesses that get started every year. And most of them don't even cross $1 million. And it's not because there's not enough opportunity or there's a lack of talent of the entrepreneur. It's not thinking big enough. And if I think about like every business, has not only grown bigger, but my vision has grown much greater with that. Your business can never exceed the size of your dreams. So if you think this is as far as I can think, your business will be stuck here. So if you think here, your business grows here. And so it all starts with your mindset. If you can dream it, there's a path to getting there.
Wow. And I think something else that was fascinating from what you said right before we hopped into the podcast was how you were getting a lot of recognition for I think you mentioned like a while back, you were getting a lot of recognition, and then you realized what it was that there's so few women-owned businesses that grow to that level. Could you kind of
Yeah.
share a little bit about that with the audience?
Yeah, both in terms of scaling and fundraising, right? But in fact, today there are more women starting businesses, and particularly Latinas that are starting businesses at a really high rate, which is exciting. It's great to follow your dreams and take a risk and do all of those things. But at the end of the day, there's also a practical aspect of needing to feed your family and make a good living. Just running a business and starting a business does not pay the bills. You have to make it big enough, profitable enough that it's a great living that you can have. And that's where there's a huge gap, because the businesses just don't grow big enough. I think in the United States, I believe there's just 4% of businesses that cross $1 million, right? And with that, and then when you look at the numbers in terms of fundraising, if your business required venture capital, barely 2-3% of women-owned businesses get any kind of funding. So there's a massive disparity in both growth and fundraising. And it's partly an access problem, not getting access to the right mentorship, the right strategies, because so much of it is, if you can see it, you can be it. But if you don't know it, you won't know how to solve it. And so much of what happens in the corporate workplaces happens in entrepreneurship as well. If you don't know how to build a bigger business, you're just not going to be able to do it. If you don't see anyone like you building a bigger business, you're not going to believe you can do it either. And if you don't have the right network, you're not going to be able to raise capital to grow your business.
Right, right. That's so fascinating. Yeah, just something that I thought was really interesting was on your website, you put this really cool phrase, right? You said it's no longer survival of the fittest, it's survival of the fastest. Traditional skills and methods have become obsolete. How quickly you adapt matters way more than you know. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What did you mean by that? I thought that was such a great quote.
And when everything is changing so fast, it doesn't matter what you're an expert in. it's going to become obsolete, right? We take a lot of pride in talking about our expertise and something that we've become great at. We're the master of something, whether it's a certain skill or profession that you've built your expertise around. But when everything is changing, it doesn't matter what you're an expert in. You're completely irrelevant. And so the only real safety that you have is your ability to adapt to that change quickly, to be able to learn quickly. And in order to do that, learning has to become your superpower, because that's the real insurance policy you've had, that no matter what change is happening, if you are the person who can learn quicker and adapt quicker than somebody else, that's the survival of the fastest. That's why learning is the true superpower in this day and age. It's not about what you knew. And constant reinvention is necessary. And that's only going to come from being able to learn.
That's so fascinating. And I think, I heard a quote a few weeks ago and it just really stuck with me how like in 2020, like 2014, so we're talking about 20, 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, it was like the digital age, like everything was now
Yeah.
digital. And now we're ushering in a new era, which I believe is like, the AI era. So I'm so excited to kind of dive into this topic. I know you're an expert with, all
Yeah.
things AI. But can you talk to us a little bit about, I think some of the listeners, maybe, I feel like we hear this term AI, but a lot of people don't actually know what it is. Maybe they're using it without knowing it, or maybe,
Yeah.
they just have nowhere to start. Could you kind of talk to us a little bit about the benefits of AI and why you think it's crucial that we adapt this epic?
Yeah, well, in modern human history, we've never had a technology that is this transformative. Over the last few decades, we've seen numerous things that have happened in technology that have fundamentally changed how we live, work, consume, whether it was the internet becoming dominant or mobile technology that is connecting people and all of that. But AI goes way deeper and broader than that. It is changing every aspect of human life and every aspect of how we work and communicate and collaborate and all of that. But the challenge is that when something is growing at this kind of speed and scale, it can be massively disruptive. Like, I expect that even in the workforce, we're going to see people being displaced as a result of that. Because if your work can be done by a machine that costs nothing, how do you retain your job? And if you don't reinvent yourself and how you do your job differently, how you amplify your innately human skills, that becomes a problem in how we approach the market. And so this is a time to not be afraid of AI, to not say, well, it's not going to affect my life. None of this is changing what I do. I'm still safe. Nobody is safe, because this is something that is going to be pervasive all throughout.
That is so fascinating. With everything changing, everything evolving the way it is, like AI is changing so drastically. The workplace is changing, but how is AI changing the workplace for women, specifically for Latinas? What's at stake for women and professionals as AI transforms? I know you talked about maybe jobs are might be displaced and different things like that. Could you kind of walk us through what's at stake?
Yeah, well, look, in modern human history, we've never had a technology that has taken over with such speed and scale. Over the last several decades, we've seen the internet take over everything and mobile technology and all of that. But there's been sort of a slower growth curve, if you will. There's a slower adoption curve. What's different with AI is not only is it more intelligent, more powerful than anything else we've ever had, but the speed at which it's enveloping human life and work is absolutely mind blowing. And when something grows that fast, it can be massively disruptive, right? It's a huge threat, because no matter what you're an expert in, it becomes irrelevant very quickly and it becomes obsolete. And now AI can do your job better than you can and cheaper and faster than you are. So one of the challenges that we have to be acutely aware of is that a lot of women, and particularly women and Latinas, are overrepresented in the jobs that are most at risk of automation and underrepresented in the roles that really shape the future. That's a huge and a very dangerous gap. And that's why participating in AI and being AI ready is so critical, because something that is a huge threat and a huge disruption can also become a great equalizer. And we've seen this in past technologies that have happened. For example, there were nations around the world that had no telephony at all. And yet when mobile got introduced, they, leapfrog to mobile adoption. And so you can do that. And that's where I see the real opportunity, is that if you have the right mindset, and you're open to learning new things and you become AI ready, it doesn't matter what your job is about. But if you embrace AI, instead of being left behind and being displaced because your job got automated, you can now actually take advantage of better results, better outcomes, and preparing yourself for the future. And that's really why the importance of focusing on AI is so critical.
That's fascinating. Yeah. I think, like you said, it's something that's kind of it's dangerous, right? It's both, right? It's like something that
Yeah,
makes our lives so much easier. Like I'm using ChatGPT for all the things in the
yeah,
podcast lately,
yeah,
for
yeah,
photos, all the things. But then it's also something that is it's a threat, right? And it's like, what mindset do we adopt, and like how do we adapt to this whole,
yeah.
everything that's coming? So I think that's so fascinating. What like you mentioned the word get left behind, right? The phrase get left behind, right? I think that's a fear that so many people have. But how can Latinas, how can women professionals, how can they bridge the gap in AI skills so that they future proof their careers and skill sets so that they don't get left behind?
Number one, just get started. Don't wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder or your boss to get you access to some AI training or tool or, waiting to like feel ready. Just start where you are. And one of the easiest ways to shift your fear into excitement is to not be so serious about it. A lot of people that I've talked to that are like, oh, I'm hearing about this AI thing, but I don't know if it really applies to me. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not a techie. I'm not an engineer. I don't think this is something that's just for engineers, so it doesn't apply to my job, or I don't even see how I could be using AI. So there's a lot of misconceptions about its relevance. And because of that, there's a feeling of fear as opposed to excitement. The best way to change that is to simply get curious and turn it into something playful and fun, right? Because when we are excited about something, we're much more willing to experiment. We're much more willing to fail. We're much more willing to, feel stupid in that process and still keep doing it. So turn something serious into something fun. Start where you are and learn one new tool, whichever one that is. ChatGPT is the most common one. If you're not already using it, you should be, and learn about prompting. You don't have to learn engineering skills with it. You don't have to learn to code with it. Just ask better questions. Anything that is of interest to you, just learn how to ask better questions and use AI to amplify what makes you unique and great. That's one of the best ways that you can use it no matter what your job is about. And finally, join a community. This is where even our community at Latinas in Tech is so powerful, because when you're surrounded by like-minded people who are explorers and curious minded learners, it automatically lifts you up. You feel less alone, less afraid, and less isolated. And that's why communities matter. So 3 things I would say is start where you are and learn one new tool, ask better questions and use it to amplify your natural talents, and then join a community.
I love that. I love that. And one thing that that I thought was so fascinating was that there's a statistic, right, that came out recently. There was a global survey from McKinsey, right, that reveals that AI adoption among organizations, soared 20. It was at 20% in 2017, 78% today, right, into
Yeah.
2025. And so it's fascinating that 40% of global jobs are expected to be impacted, kind of the stuff that we've been talking about. But
Yeah.
what's fascinating is that women are actually at a 25, they're adopting AI 25
Yeah.
at a lower rate, which is 25% less than men. Why do you think that is? Why do you think men are they more privy to it? Is it just the access? What do you think it is that's making it so that way?
Yeah, I think there's a few things at play here. Number one is access. A lot of women are simply not exposed to AI training or tools in the workplace, which is typically the place where learn new skills and all of that. And so if it's not part of their role or their team priorities or their boss isn't telling them to do it, they're just not getting access to it. We actually at Latinas in Tech did a survey of our members to find out about their attitudes and the fears or the aspirations around AI. And it was fascinating to learn that mostly there was a lot of excitement, but they also said that they were getting little to no training about AI in the workplace. And what they were getting was so generic and not helpful that they didn't know how to apply it. Access can prevent you, the right kind of access can prevent you from actually building the skill and actually slow down your growth. So don't wait for that access. Bet on yourself and start learning and experimenting on your own. Number 2 is awareness. Like if you don't feel like it applies to your job, to your life, and you feel like it's about techies or engineers, there's a misconception that's preventing you from building that skill. And so for that, just remember, this has got nothing to do with engineering. You don't need a Stanford degree to learn AI, to adopt AI. This is something that is universal. And it's really about the collaboration of a human with AI that creates so much value. So no matter who you are, what age you are, what gender you are, where you live, what you do for work, embrace it. There's no turning back the clock. Just embrace it and recognize that there's a role and value for you in here. And finally, if you don't see yourself represented in it, you tend to self-select out. And I think identity can sometimes play a role in, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so there's a hesitation to, again, take a chance and build your skill set in that. But this is where it's really critical that we recognize that if we want a world that's equitable for all, we have to stop waiting for someone to create it. You need to hand raise, you need to step into the field, and you need to start playing the game.
Yeah. And I love that. I love what you said in the beginning of the interview where it's like, so often we're kind of thinking we're believing someone else is going to come along and help us with that. But, that basically we're in a moment that there's a revolution happening and you can either get left behind or you can be at the
Yeah,
forefront of it. So it's really us
absolutely.
choosing, like, what do we want? Do we want to be at the forefront of this revolution? Do we want to kind of equalize and be a disruptor and get
Yeah,
ahead and have this upper hand in this moment? So I just think that this is such a timely conversation. So I love that. But Nikki,
yeah.
you're a serial entrepreneur, author. So you have so many cool things. You are now, in this amazing role with this amazing organization. You're striving in so many areas, but was there ever a season in your life where you feel like maybe you failed? And if so, how? And what did you learn from that season?
So many seasons. I truly believe this, that every success I've experienced has happened on the back of a major failure. And I write about this, I shared this in my book, but I really see life as a video game where we all start off at our level one. Whatever your level one is, we start off with a set of skills and confidence and strategies that we know. And we use that and we keep failing and falling down and all of that. And at some point, you overcome those obstacles and you get to level two. Well, guess what happens at level two? The problems just get bigger. Your obstacles just got harder at level two. So how do you overcome those obstacles? You take more chances, you take more risks, you build better skills, adopt better strategies, have more confidence, and you keep trying and trying and trying, and you fail and fall down a lot. And then eventually you get past those obstacles and you go from level two to level three. And guess what happens then? Your problems get even bigger. So every success requires taking chances, requires failing and falling. And so I can literally look through my entire career journey and see whether it was a job or a business that there were so many failures. And that in between period where you're falling a lot and failing a lot is soul crushing. There's nothing fun about it. I can never say, oh yeah, I enjoyed failing and I had high self-esteem and lots of confidence during that time. No, everything was crushed. I felt like crap. I, felt insecure, inadequate, had self-doubt about whether I was good at anything or did I just get lucky in the past, or feeling lost about my future. Like, where do I go from here? What are people thinking? You feel like the spotlight is on you. Everybody's looking at you as this giant, colossal failure. That's how you feel during that time. It really sucks. But at some point, if you don't give up and you keep trying and you focus on improving yourself, not just your skills, but your mindset, and you keep working at it, eventually you get to the next level. And now every time I face another failure or a giant obstacle, I just know that it's the stepping stone to the next level of success. And it's the next version of me that's going to emerge.
That's amazing. I love that. I love the video game analogy and how it's the next version of you that's going to emerge. I love how you tied that together. And Nikki, what two quick action steps would you give or pieces of advice would you give to an entrepreneur or maybe a career professional who is listening, but they have no idea where to start when it comes to AI? And how do they get up to speed? What do they do? What would you recommend?
Well, if you're not already using it, get ChatGPT or any other tool. The simplest and most relevant thing to do is audit your workflow, whether it is something you do at work or something you do in your personal life. Think about what repetitive things you do over and over again and simply like audit that to identify where you could have AI kind of, create a solution for you. And it could be even something as simple as maybe there's a kind of email that you send repeatedly, right? Like, how could it write an email for you? The other skill that I think is universally valuable is improve your prompting skills. The better questions you ask, the better the outcomes. It's not as simple as just asking a basic question. The more sophisticated your prompting gets with an AI tool, the better your responses. And if you can train AI to learn about you, to speak in your brand voice, to be able to ask smart questions, to give it a role that it can guide you, the sky's the limit. Like, you've got the beauty of the human mind and the wisdom we have as people combined with the intelligence of technology. And when you combine that, you become unstoppable. So rather than feeling threatened by it, think about how it amplifies who you are, your authentic value that you bring in.
I love that, I love that, and one last question that I wanted to ask you was, what would you I guess, kind of what would you advise to someone that's maybe scared of AI? Because I think there's a very real fear. I think a lot of people might actually be scared of it.
Anything new involves change. And at the core of our fear isn't the thing itself. The core of our fear is the change that we have to make in ourselves. But the reality is that everything in the world is always changing. There's nothing that remains static. And so rather than focus about the thing that you're fearful about, or the thing that you're avoiding, whether it's AI or some other technology or robots or whatever that is, don't focus on that. Focus on how you can build your mindset around embracing change and adapting quickly and adopting a learner's mindset. Because if you trust yourself to make it through any kind of uncertainty and any kind of unknown future, you stop worrying about the fear and you start getting excited about the adventure.
I love that. Wow, that's so profound, I love that. Oh my gosh, Nikki, you've given so much wisdom in such a little bit of time. I love it. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they follow Latinas in Tech? And how can they attend the summit? Can you tell us all the things?
Absolutely. Well, connect with me on LinkedIn or on my website at nikkibarua.com. For our community, I would invite people to join us. Visit our website at latinasintech.org. Become a member. It doesn't matter who you are, what your career interest is. AI and tech is changing every aspect of life and work. And if you want to be in the know, you got to join a community that will help you get to know that. And so we're not limited in membership to any certain profile or any location. So come join us as a member. It's free. Engage in local chapters. And if you want to be where all the action is, come to the summit on May 28th in San Francisco and get your tickets now. And I think we're going to provide a special offer to your listeners. So welcome them to come see where all of the future is being created and walk away with actionable skills. This is not a passive lean back experience. This is where you actually get to meet people and learn skills and prepare yourself for a future that's inevitable.
Yeah. Wow, that's so fascinating. Oh my gosh, Nikki, thank you so much for being here today. It was such a pleasure having you and hearing all your wisdom.